Coming up on Network Africa. Security forces for coup attempts in Niger days before inauguration of new president Mohamed Bazoum. The International Criminal Court to rule on upholding the acquittal of Côte d'Ivoire's former president Laurent Gbagbo. Plus, new rules announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa for South Africans as Easter period approaches. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. We begin today in Niger, where security forces say an attempted coup has been thwarted by the Presidential Guard and several soldiers have been arrested. Residents say heavy gunfire was heard around the presidential palace in the capital, Niamey, before it died down in the early hours of Wednesday. The shooting takes place less than 48 hours ahead of the inauguration of newly elected President Mohamed Bazoum. This has prompted the city to be on high alert. There's been an increase in attacks by militant armed groups as well as political tension in the country following Mr. Bazoum's victory in February's presidential election. Joining us now for more on this is African Affairs analyst Lester Wilcox. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. What do you make of this failed coup attempt in Niger?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
I was asking you what you make of this failed attempt, coup attempt in Niger.
Well, it's totally unexpected. Having known the history of Niger Republic up till now, and knowing through the fact that the election that the winner is to be sworn in tomorrow is still under contest. The former president who contested with the winner is still having issues, even though the courts have declared, have accepted results. He still had issues with the election, and there was supposed to be a protest in Niger that was in Miami that was put off by the authorities. So those tensions are still there. So one will not be totally surprised that an attempt to scuttle the democratic process will have been in place, because there's a wide division in Niger, and this division has has shown clearly in the elections and in the grievances that followed the elections. So what was not expected, but it's totally not unexpected that things like this could be attempted to happen within the system.
You know, this is coming less than 48 hours to the new president's inauguration, President Bazoum, who was elected in February. What impact, if any, is this likely to have on his administration?
Well, it still shows that there are elements within the system that has not fully accepted democratic principles and norms. Niger has not been, it's not totally alien to coups. Well, the last been in 2010. Since then, the democratic process has been allowed to run, for which the outgoing president was able to do his 2 terms, and is handing over to President-elect Bozima, who was an interior minister in his cabinet. So it also shows that there are still elements that are not yet in tandem with democratic principles. Moreover, when the former president Ousmane, who lost to Bozuma, is still challenging the result, and he has a wide range of followership. It shows the fact that Niger is still fragile. Democratic tendency is still fragile, despite the fact that for almost a long period, almost a decade, they've been having a seamless democratic structure. But it's not yet Uhuru, just like in any other African setting, where people still want to attempt to discredit the system. So he has an uphill task in order to maintain stability within the system.
Yeah, just, to pick on what you said there, he does have an uphill task, doesn't he? Niger is a country already battling with Islamist insurgency. There's been increasing attacks as well as political tensions after Mr. Bazoum's victory in the February election. How can this new president bring about a change to the challenges besetting the nation?
Well, there's no better person to tackle the insecurity, the banditry, the Islamic fundamentalism that is plaguing the country than President-elect Buzima. He has been interior minister. Interior minister is someone that takes care of internal defense and internal security of the country. So he's been interior minister. So he should be abreast with the entire system, with what is going on. And it is time for him to forge, because I'm not forgetting the fact that, like I said, there are elements that are not yet in tandem with democratic structure. The former president Ousmane is still bitter about the election. So in Africa, people do not think about the country, they think about themselves. So it's an uphill task, like I said. But he should be well groomed with what is happening, well abreast with the system. He's been in government, he's not a stranger. He's interior minister. He was interior minister up till now, so he should be he should have a full grasp of the situation and know whatever principles and processes to put in place and whatever strategies he has to put in place in order to overcome whatever difficulties he has been. But again, one will not also overlabor the fact that African countries, especially the poor ones like Niger, cannot hold this on their own completely. Yeah. Colonial master France should come to help. The UN should help. The African Union should help. Well, African Union, as far as I'm concerned, they're useless in terms of conflict resolution. But it's not out of place for everybody to put down so that stability will return, and then the democratic system that has taken root for a while now should continue unabated. Coups are no longer fashionable, and nothing should be done to topple the democratic processes in Niger Republic.
All right, then, African Affairs analyst Celeste Wilcox, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and analysis with us on Network Africa.
It's always my pleasure, anytime. Thank you very much.
Moving on now, the governor of South Sudan's eastern equatorial state, Louis Lojore, has survived an attack by heavily armed youth from the Buya community. His press secretary says nearly 20 people are now known to have been killed in the attack. The angry armed youth followed the governor and attacked the military barracks in Camp 15, bringing the death toll of the two incidents to nearly 20. The dead include one of the governor's bodyguard and a soldier's wife. 3 others were critically injured. Officials say the attack on Camp 15 is believed to be a revenge of last week's deadly assault on the Sudan People's Liberation Army in a position camp where 5 soldiers, including their commander, were killed. The International Criminal Court is set to rule on whether to uphold the acquittal of Côte d'Ivoire's former president, Laurent Gbagbo. Mr. Gbagbo and his former youth leader, Charles Ble Goude, were charged in connection with post-electoral violence in the West African nation more than a decade ago. The 2010 violence flared when Mr. Gbagbo, who had been in power for a decade, refused to accept defeat. They were cleared of crimes against humanity in 2019. But the prosecution appealed against the decision to clear Laurent Gbagbo, arguing there were procedural errors in how the original verdict was delivered and insisting that thousands of documents and 96 witnesses presented during the trial had proved his guilt beyond reasonable doubt. The 75-year-old has been living in Brussels but hopes to go home if the prosecutor's appeal fails. The head of the UN mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo says the 2023 electoral process is an essential step in strengthening the country's democracy. UN Special Representative Bintou Keita says that through her exchanges with Presidents Félix Tshisekedi and the Prime Minister-designate, there is a momentum for change that can be built. There is also an opening to push forward the necessary governance and institutional reforms, which will have a direct impact to support peaceful resolution of the conflicts in the East.
I have therefore stressed to the Congolese leadership that the new government must promptly act on a number of priority areas, which in turn correspond to the priorities outlined in MONUSCO's mandate. These include the reform of the Congolese military and police forces, taking ownership for the effective protection of civilians at the national and provincial levels, ensuring effective and sustainable community-based disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration, strengthening the civilian and military justice systems and support to transitional justice, and beginning plans for the 2023 electoral cycle. I am underlining to all stakeholders the need to act within the constitutional framework and to organize the elections in a timely and inclusive manner, respecting the electoral calendar. To silence the guns, there is no just military solution, but political strategies. These strategies must take into account and address the many social, economic, and governance needs, including in relation to the management of the security apparatus and addressing the underlying challenges of land insecurity and improving transparency and accountability in the mining sector.
To our coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic, the South African government has banned the sale of takeaway alcohol over this weekend's Easter holiday to prevent a surge in coronavirus infections. President Cyril Ramaphosa says alcohol has a role in encouraging negligent behavior. However, bars and restaurants may still serve drinks. Religious gatherings have also been restricted to 50% capacity if indoors. Coronavirus transmission is relatively low in South Africa after a second wave peaked in January. Alcohol bans have been imposed several times throughout the pandemic.
We have decided to keep the country on coronavirus alert level 1. However, due to the specific circumstances of this period, we need to make a few adjustments. Some of the measures that will remain unchanged are the following. The curfew will be maintained from midnight to 4 a.m., so there is no change. Public recreational spaces such as beaches, parks, and dams will remain open. However, this will continue to be subject to the health protocols such as social distancing, mask wearing. Funerals remain restricted to a maximum of 100 and with a 2-hour limit on services. Interprovincial travel will still be permitted so people can travel between our provinces. However, I urge all South Africans to limit their travel as much as possible and to observe all necessary health protocols if they cannot avoid traveling.
A private hospital in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, has halted COVID-19 vaccination, citing lack of supplies, despite the government having more than 1 million doses. The Aga Khan Hospital announced it would resume vaccination once it gets more supplies from the government. The Health Ministry on Tuesday said only 130,575 people had been vaccinated countrywide so far, with 806,000 doses distributed out of the 1.12 million doses available. This comes as a private facility began charging for vaccination with the Russian Sputnik V COVID-19 vaccine, whose use and distribution the government had cautioned against. Instead, the Kenyan government has approved the use of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. Still to come on the program. Concerns grow over the whereabouts of a missing 19-year-old student of Nigerian origin in the UK. More details in a moment. Please stay with me. Thanks for staying with us. The United Nations representatives have handed over 3 solar-powered oxygen plants to Somalia's Galmudug state authorities and witnessed the start of COVAX vaccination campaign in the region. The Deputy Special Representative of the UN Secretary-General, Adam Abdulmola, and the World Health Organization representative for Somalia, Dr. Mamunur Malik, visited the Hanano Hospital to officially hand over the solar-powered oxygen plants. Like most of Somalia, Galmudug, home to nearly 1.5 million people, struggles for resources when it comes to healthcare. According to authorities, only 38% of the population have access to healthcare in the entire federal member state.
Oxygen is a smart investment and is essential for saving lives for all emergency medical conditions. The right investment now will help in the future, not only for COVID-19 treatment, but also all the diseases that warrant the use of supplemental oxygen therapy, such as pneumonia.
A batch of Sinopharm's COVID-19 vaccines donated by the Chinese government to Ethiopia has arrived in the capital Addis Ababa. The doses were received at the Addis Ababa International Airport by Chinese ambassador to Ethiopia, Ethiopian Minister of Health, and the State Minister of Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Chinese minister said China is the first to provide Ethiopia with vaccine aid through the bilateral intergovernmental channel, which speaks volumes to the profound friendship between the two countries. He also highlighted that the Chinese government has been donating vaccines to dozens of countries as a show of solidarity in the fight against the pandemic. China has donated and is donating vaccines to 80 developing countries in urgent need and has provided support on their COVAX for emergency use of vaccines in developing countries. COVAX is an international vaccine campaign co-led by the World Health Organization and its partners, and it aims to speed up the development, production, and fair distribution of new COVID-19 vaccines.
Several donations of supplies like PPE, test kits, medical equipment have been delivered. In addition, technical support and medical missions have been here to share experiences in how to best combat this challenging pandemic. A true show of solidarity and strong friendship and partnership between these two countries that has always been there but continues to grow.
The head of the UN mission in South Sudan, David Shearer, says getting vaccines out to the population is not as easy as it sounds in a place like South Sudan, where logistics are so difficult. Though South Sudan has secured more than 2 million COVID-19 vaccines, it will struggle to get shots into arms as the rainy season approaches, rendering many roads impassable. David Shearer is leaving the country next month after heading the more than $1 billion per year United Nations peacekeeping mission since 2016.
And the challenge really is now is to be able to make sure that the Ministry of Health, working alongside UNICEF and the World Health Organization, is able to take those vaccines, get them out to where they're needed, and put them in people's arms. And that's not as easy as it sounds. In a place like South Sudan, where logistics are so difficult, particularly in the rainy season that'll be coming in a couple of months, roads do not exist in the rainy season. We have to fly things everywhere or take them by barge or by river.
To other stories now, police in Tunisia have fired tear gas at protesters demanding more job opportunities. Clashes broke out in the southern city of Tatouine when the police moved to disperse demonstrators who were trying to storm a government building. A third of Tunisia's young people are out of work. Protesters accuse the government of reneging on a commitment made in 2017 to create jobs in oil and infrastructure projects. And now officers from the Metropolitan Police in London have renewed their appeal for information regarding a missing student, 19-year-old Richard Okorogheye. According to his parents, who are of Nigerian descent, the teenager, who has sickle cell disease, was struggling to cope with lockdown and has been missing for over a week. Our London correspondent, Juliana Olayinka, has more.
This 19-year-old student, Richard Okorogheye, is missing. His last confirmed sighting was over a week ago when he was seen boarding a bus at 8:44 p.m. in the evening. His sudden disappearance and the initial muted police response has caused outrage among the capital's black community. Richard hasn't been seen since the evening of Monday, March the 22nd. He called his mother, explaining that he'd be going to see his friends, but he didn't turn up and nobody has seen him since. This is the area where he went missing, which is the Ladbroke Grove side of West London. The parents are in absolute anguish.
He's a giant on that. He's a tall, strong man, and he enjoys talking to his friends and things about in a point he got cut off from his friends, and somehow, I don't know how it happened, that they met some people, but we're not very 100% sure, but we know that this is happening. So it's been very devastating as well. Yeah, I don't know how to describe, but it is serious. All we want to do now is how to get him back. Make sure we have him by the grace of God at home, and then tell us his story as well. Richard has been on some kind of setting at home, and after some time I think that got him very depressed in some ways. And when you keep somebody in the house for a month plus, it's very, and with all these things happening, added to it. So that's where it gets really, I think he got really fed up just of everything, so I bolted for a few days and we're still waiting to get him back.
When Richard's family first reported him missing to the police and suggested they check CCTV near their home, they were told they did not have the resources. This disregard of the teenager's welfare is what led to the case being widely shared on social media. Detectives have released this new image of the missing student as the teenager's mother pleads for the public's help with the investigation. Juliana Olayinka reporting for Channels TV News in London.
And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shobowale. Bye for now.